I think that was one of the more stressful aspects of like everything because, obviously, yeah, you have international relationship, there's borders between you, so there's the logistical side, but even the going back to culture, I think we had like different ideas of like timelines, like a lot of my friends back home, they date somebody for like years before getting married, for example. And in Peru, that can happen as well, but it's also sometimes people don't. Like it's a little more acceptable to be in a range, I think. And so I think for us, it was kind of clear early on that like marriage was the route for us to like close the distance eventually. And yeah, it was like hard to grapple with, how quickly do we do this? Like, Miguel was kind of eager to just do it and didn't want to do the distance. And I didn't want to do the distance either, but I was also like, I don't know, like, it seems really fast. And, so like, I think that was hard for us.
Welcome to International Love Story, the podcast about intercultural relationships. My name is Christina, and in today's podcast episode, I would like to welcome Colleen. She's from the US, and Miguel, he's from Peru. They're currently reunited, living together in Peru, but it wasn't always like this, as they have had a long distance relationship for quite a while until they were able to close the distance in January 2023 or 2022. You have to correct me on that one. But with this being said, I would like to welcome Colleen and Miguel. I'm so happy for you guys. First of all, that you've managed to close the distance a while ago already, that you've accomplished so much already. And yeah, I'm very, very excited to learn more about you and to learn more about your story. So with this being said, go ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? Tell us all about you.
Sure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. It's great being here.
You want to start?
Sure. Well, we first started following your podcast like a long time ago when we started dating and started to try to close the distance. And it was really helpful to hear other people's stories and experiences on the good and the bad and struggles and also the fun stuff to learn and to move forward in our relationship. So, it's been a good and very interesting path of love with Colleen so far. Starting a long time ago, actually, where we met in Europe, and then starting with a friendship, been really good friends first, and then, at some point decided to start dating. So, but it's been a long process. It's been like a really interesting process. Many things have changed. We've learned a lot. We've grown a lot. And we've moved to different places in the world. And we've been dating in the US, we've dated in Peru, and now we're planning to move back to the US at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. So as Miguel said, we've known each other for a long time, but since 2013, but we didn't start dating until 2021. And so given the distance and the pandemic and everything, it felt just kind of like a whirlwind for a while, like trying to figure out how to date internationally. I had never done that before. You had sort of done that before, but not really like long term. So yeah, it's been a lot, but we've made it to this point. So
And as you've mentioned, you initially met as friends in Europe. That was in 2013. Did I understand correctly?
yes.
Wow, that's like 11 years ago. I would love to learn more about the first time you met, and I would also love to learn about what exactly switched from being friends to feeling more for each other. So how was it?
Well, I can share a little bit of my experience. Well, I was traveling in Europe with a really good friend, and then also visiting my sister who was living in France at the moment. But I decided to do like a Euro trip, like going to different places, different countries. And then one of them was Spain. And so I stayed in Barcelona at a nice motel or hotel. I don't remember now. Hostel. Okay. It was a hostel. And it was like a normal, not fancy one, we were students. Yeah, backpackers, simple. And back then I was, just had 2 or 3 years working, saving, so I didn't have a lot of money. And I stayed there with my friend who I was traveling with. And then I entered the hotel and I saw Colleen with her sister at the lobby. So they were doing something at the lobby, waiting for a taxi. I don't remember exactly the situation because it was like a long time ago, but I remember she was there with her sister. And that, it was like the time where everybody met each other and like started like connecting on Facebook or making friends everywhere. A very social time in my life as well. So, I decided to just approach and start the conversation with her. And so we started talking. We shared a little bit of our experiences and while we were there in Europe. She was with her sister, but I don't know why I didn't interact much with her, but I was more talking to you.
I think we were speaking Spanish.
Oh, we were speaking Spanish.
My
That's why.
sister doesn't speak Spanish.
It's like that helps a lot that she spoke Spanish. And then I learned she was always really interested in Peru and like Latin American studies or cultures. And so we interchanged Facebook, connected on Facebook, and started our initial conversation there, our initial chats, text messages after that. But the encounter was just 15 minutes or 20 minutes, no more than that. It was really short. That was my experience, at least. And of course, I liked her. I was attracted to her, being the reason that I talked to her, that she was really good looking for me. And also, like, I don't know, the conversation went well. At the beginning, I was intrigued. And then once we started chatting or texting, I felt that there was something there that was worth exploring. Like, it was an interesting conversation. We shared some things in common also. So that was more or less the way we met.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I would say I was interested more as a friend at first, but I was interested in Peru because I had at the time I had applied for a Fulbright scholarship for Peru that I never ended up getting that, but I was in, so I was asking him a lot of questions and yeah, and then as you said, we didn't talk for very long and we just kind of kept it friendly chatting afterwards and our paths crossed a few more times, a long time in between, but like a year or so later, I was living in Chicago and he messaged me and said, I'm going to be in Chicago for a few days looking at graduate schools. And so like I saw him then and there were just these moments. Then I went to Peru with a friend of mine since we wanted to do Machu Picchu and all of that. So I said, hey, I'm going to be in Lima and I hung out with him and his sister and their friends. And so I felt like it sort of developed for me more over time, but it was kind of cool to like, actually be meeting the same person at all these different places. Cause I'd met a lot of people in Europe and hostels and stuff like that. And some of them I saw again, but many of them I didn't. And we saw each other like multiple times. So it was kind of a fun friendship, then yeah, developing feelings, but then being like, we didn't really communicate about it back then. And I think just the fact that we were living in different places and he went to Los Angeles, but that was still far from Chicago. And then our lives were just kind of in flux. Graduate school for both of us at some point. He moved to Asia. So we were kind of just like crossing every now and then like this. And finally in 2021, we kind of addressed it more and like made it happen.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
So
What
mean, it's
make
been like-
you address it? I'm sorry for interrupting, but what make you address it more? Was it because you knew that lives could be aligned now, that you're looking for something more serious, or was there a specific moment you realized we should address it?
I guess a little bit of both for me. As Colleen mentioned, I think love or, feelings were or developed over time as we saw each other more in time because we didn't plan actually to see each other all this, in the beginning all the time. It was, as she mentioned, like coincidence, every year. Basically, we figure it out after the fact. We analyzed like the years after at the beginnings how it happened, but it was like actually we saw each other around once a year or something like that at least. Like 2013 we met, late 2013, but 2014 or 2015, the beginnings. I think we saw each other again in Chicago. And then 2016 we saw each other again in Lima. And then 2017 in LA and 2018 in LA, I think again. So it was like, like I had interviews. She had a friend in LA also. Like
No, in
But
LA, I came to actually visit you.
okay, that time was the reason, but then
Yeah,
we met after it.
but those were the only times. All the other times were coincidental.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean, like there are coincidences, but that allowed us to see each other every time as friends, of course, but that helped a lot to develop these feelings and relationship in time, which was great, you know, and it was like to me, like it was like more like unbelievable after the fact that it happened. I realized that I liked her, that like life sometimes can put you some events that you don't see why, but then you connect the dots and realize, oh, this is maybe why.
Yeah. I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it, really, because it was a time of like upheaval for so many people, and including both of us. And it, also isolation and not really meeting new people, and so reflecting more on, the past. And yeah, it was at that time he was back in Peru, sort of accidentally, back in the home with your parents. I moved back with my sister. I had finished graduate school. He was done with graduate school. So I guess in that sense, you're kind of right. Like things maybe slowed down enough to like think about it. And also we're getting older and analyzing your life and being like, wait, what do I really want? So I think we both felt that probably, right?
Yeah, I was gonna add to that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it was a combination of both, like the sequence of events, but also the time in our lives. We were getting more serious, or I was like starting to think more seriously about, starting a family, my future, and all of that. So it was a better time that like 10 years ago, where I was just, like I didn't know what's gonna happen with my life. I was like living more my life and going out and traveling, don't caring too much about those things. But yeah, it was a realization that I was like already 30 or over 30. And it was important to think about that.
Yeah.
So you met in your 20s and you got serious in your 30s.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was still in my 20s, but 29, almost 30.
And we met in 2013. How were you? Like I was
21,
4.
22.
Yeah, you were 21, 22. Yeah.
21, I was,
So yeah,
really
met
young.
early 20s and got serious like late 20s or early 30s.
Yeah. Long journey.
Yeah, definitely one journey. I mean, over the time, you also had enough time to really get to know each other and to build a deep level of trust. And what I think is interesting is that, yeah, you addressed the topic of being serious in 2021, and that was when COVID hit the wall. That was when it felt like everything was standing still. So I'm really wondering, I mean, you've just mentioned it, what your thoughts were in that very moment, but I think it's just baffling to know that this is when you decided, like the moment you weren't sure when you're going to see each other again, when things will get back to normal, that, okay, we have to address it now. So I'm wondering where and how you communicated, or did it just develop and you realized we do miss each other so much that we know for sure there's much more than just friendship. So when did this click? When did it make click?
Yeah, so it was like actually coming out of the pandemic a little bit. And the pandemic happened in different times in different
In the
parts of the
US, we were
world.
definitely like more coming out of it, probably than the rest of the world, but
Yeah.
things are opening again. I had started to travel a little bit again, not abroad, but domestically flying, and
Right.
that's sort of what you can explain brought you there.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Asia before, like in Vietnam specifically, and around that area is where COVID started. So when I came to Peru, as Colleen mentioned, was accidentally. I stayed in Lima because I couldn't go back to
You came for
Vietnam.
Christmas 2019,
I
right?
came, yeah, for Christmas to visit, and I had a plan to stay for a month or two, no longer than that, be with my family, take a break, and then go back to business. But I couldn't go back; country was closed, and I had to stay. But the stay was longer than expected. And we know the story after that. But then I was like locked for a year and a half or so, and couldn't do much. Started my business, and I was working basically or mostly on my stuff, but couldn't see much of the world. So yeah, after that, after Peru started opening borders, of course the US was already I think, open at that time.
Yeah.
Or like
Some
more
of it
before
never
that.
closed.
Yeah, some of them never closed. So Peru was really strict about COVID. And yeah, I wanted to get out. I started connecting with friends and people, and then well, we started talking again, texting, and then I said like I'm thinking to go to US and visit, and started planning something not like really strict, say, or really clear, because nothing was clear at that moment.
And not really to
And
see
not
me,
really,
just-
not really, yeah, not really to see her just for the sake of dating, but it was more like, oh, I want to go and visit and take a break also to change location, breathe different airs. And so I traveled, I saw friends, and I saw Colleen, and then we went out and reconnected and started dating.
Yeah, so we sort of decided like we saw each other once and then it was kind of we were still living in different he was in Los Angeles again and I was in Minneapolis, which is like I don't know, 3.5 hour flight or something.
Yes.
So not close. And
Mhm.
but I went to LA to visit another friend. And so I remember debating on the airplane, like, should I text him or no? Because at that point we hadn't seen each other in like 3 years, like at least like a long time. Probably the longest we ever went. And so I felt we kind of lost touch. We sort of had reconnected, but it was kind of weird, you know?
Yeah.
So I remember thinking, should I text him or no? And I decided to before the plane took off, and then I put on airplane mode. So I didn't know if he would answer. But yeah, so we saw each other and kind of, I think, feeling it out. And then conversations that happened after that were kind of like,
Started getting more.
that's when we had what you're talking about, I guess, those addressing not the issue, but the elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as mentioned, it was an elephant that built up over years, and you knew each other quite well at that point, I guess. If you compare how your relationship evolved from there to those 8 years of friendship, yes, 8 years of friendship before, I mean, obviously, there must have been a shift because friendship is still different than dating, but you were able to dive deep on getting to know each other. What shifted? Like, what was it you discovered from each other, also culture-wise, for example? I would be very curious to learn more about that.
Yeah, actually, it's a lot. Of course, as you mentioned, like when you know someone as a friend is one thing, but someone as a partner is like a completely different thing. You learn a lot of things from, I learned a lot of things from her past and childhood and teenage years, and then, youth. So everything combined, and understanding where she comes from, understanding her culture, understanding her values, everything together, and why she's the person she is, like those things, and then combining that with my values, where I come from, culture, and everything. So it was a process, of course, of learning process that we didn't know much as friends, and we had to explore. And well, I think it takes years, and still we're learning things about each other. But of course, it feels different at this point after learning important things. Of course, the first time, I guess, like people learn the most important things about each other, and then you learn more like collateral things, I guess, around the main person, the core person that she is. So I feel that it was quite a process, I would say, huge, very humbling, and also I would say it took some effort to open my mind, open our minds, I guess, together, and understand where each other come from, and that some things we'll have to work on. We'll have to discuss and agree on and compromise maybe.
Yeah, and I think like as friends, we did have an advantage in like we knew each other's cultures like fairly well. Like he lived in the US. I was like really interested in Peru, and by the time we started dating, I'd like gone and done my graduate school thesis and here, and I was more involved, knew more about the culture, knew more Peruvians before we were dating, but it didn't prepare us maybe as much as like you would think, I think, for dating, because now it was like, oh, things that you just happen to know or observe about another culture. Now it's like actually a part of your life. And so I think those things from the beginning, came up in like various ways. And some of it's just we're different as individuals, but I think a lot of it for me seemed also cultural.
Mhm.
We come from really different cultures, really. Even within the US, I come from like an area that's like less, Latino, less like it's more probably German, like your culture. It's not Miami, or it's not Los Angeles, it's not Texas. So yeah, we had to work through those one by one. I was still working on them.
Yeah, and for sure, friendship helps to feel more comfortable. In the beginning, of course, those years helped. It's like different to just date someone new, completely new, but this one really made us feel more comfortable to start and begin, like a plan for something serious, I think. Otherwise, I don't know, maybe it would have been different, but I think that made me feel more comfortable with her. And I also had a feeling, or always like since we met, a feeling or something inside me told me or showed me similarities or things that I could relate with my family that I could see in her. So I don't know why, but sometimes you feel those things. And I felt that. So, but friendship helped. It's just like the transition was, um, I would say not like what I worked, but took a little time to understand those differences and make it work, I would say, at every level.
Yeah, I agree.
And obviously, there was this point where, after you addressed the elephant in the room, that you were looking forward taking the next step. And the next step for you was closing the distance, which you've managed. But it wasn't that easy, as I heard. So for everyone who's listening and or watching right now, how was it for you, the transition from like starting the relationship to moving together? What happened in between exactly? What were your thoughts, your emotions? What were you going through during that time?
I think that was one of the more stressful aspects of like everything because, obviously, yeah, you have international relationship, there's borders between you, so there's the logistical side, but even the going back to culture, I think we had like different ideas of like timelines, like a lot of my friends back home, they date somebody for like years before getting married, for example. And in Peru, that can happen as well, but it's also sometimes people don't. Like it's a little more acceptable to be in a range, I think. And so I think for us, it was kind of clear early on that like marriage was the route for us to like close the distance eventually. And yeah, it was like hard to grapple with, how quickly do we do this? Like, Miguel was kind of eager to just do it and didn't want to do the distance. And I didn't want to do the distance either, but I was also like, I don't know, like, it seems really fast. And, so like, I think that was hard for us. And then we're lucky in a lot of ways. We both work remote. So like, we didn't have to worry about jobs and stuff. We could keep our work, and time zones are more or less the same. So that was a huge advantage. But I think, yeah, kind of the emotional part of it for me, and we were going back and forth, but now I've spent much more time in Peru. And so closing the distance was nice. And then I also had to deal with like, oh, I kind of moved, but it was temporary. We didn't know how long. And I felt maybe not fully like emotionally prepared for it. But at the same time, our options were just limited, because you can't just like decide to move where you want or do what you want in these relationships. You got to deal with like the legal systems in both countries. So yeah, I think it put a lot of pressure on us, pressure that didn't come from us, but we nonetheless had to deal with.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was quite stressful, I would say, to figure it out because I guess in the beginning I felt like confused. I didn't know. I mean, I knew I liked her and I wanted to be with her, but I didn't know if it was possible. I thought maybe, oh, this is just like a dream. This is just like something temporary. I don't know if it's gonna survive or not, as it happened to me before actually, but that was my fear. So I kind of wanted to, because I was like in a more serious stage in my life, and I really wanted to be with her and make it work. Also, I wanted to try something, and that's why I suggested to do something about it this time, and, make it work somehow. But it was really stressful to figure it out and know exactly what to do and exactly have a plan and know what is the time that it takes and what are the next steps or how we can make it work, because we were starting to date in the US, like going back and forth from LA to Minneapolis, and vice versa. And then after that, I came back to Peru, and we said, okay, we're gonna do like 2 months at a time. Or at first it was 1 month at a time. So it was like a little,
Yeah, even deciding how long to visit was like a negotiation.
yeah, it was like a compromise there, because I didn't know exactly how it could work if we didn't see each other a lot. And, like I had to learn more on how those things work, even though I thought I had some previous, knowledge or experience, but it didn't work for me. So I had to relearn and open my mind to new ways. And she also wanted to make it work. She wanted to make it work, so she made a huge effort to come here, back and forth first, and then to move here while we figure out that legal part and are able to live where we want to live.
Yeah, we decided really early on that we would like start at least in Los Angeles, because we thought, well, logically it made the most sense for both. It was sort of kind of between where we are from. Culturally, it's a good fit for him, so he's not having to completely like upend his own culture. But it was my country, direct flight to Lima, also direct flight to like Chicago, or places where my family is. And so we figured that out really early, but the kind of path to get there was not so easy to figure out. And we're still not there. So
I think.
we still have that in mind, but it's been like just a challenge, figuring out what our options are, which one are we gonna do, and then, now we're in the process, but it's like it takes forever.
Yeah. It's stressful for sure. It creates a lot of, instability, creates a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety sometimes, not being able to plan your life, our lives. Can't really plan.
Yeah.
We don't get any insights or any information how's the process going, or when we're gonna hear back at all. So we just like have to wait. Basically, we've been waiting for almost like 16, 17 months. Yeah, 17 months as of now.
Since we got married, yeah.
Since we got married.
So we closed the distance, but we didn't reach our initial like plan yet. So it's like a two-part thing.
And we underestimated the time.
Yeah.
What did you estimate?
Well, I think we knew it could be like a year or a little more, but we were sort of hopeful it would be faster, because there's like a portal. Once you apply for an immigration case, like in the US, you can like log into your portal, and it'll give you like an estimate about this much time until a decision. And it's been giving us wrong estimates for a long time. And we just kind of know not to trust it. But in the beginning we thought, oh, like it's gonna be faster than we thought. Like,
Yeah. The lawyer actually told us, the first step is going to take around 18 months. And we're like, what? If the portal is saying like 6-7 months,
5 months,
it's not that. And we said, no, the lawyer's not good. Like, we didn't want to trust that.
Yeah, we were hopeful because we were it's not that it's bad to live here. It's just we had that in mind. And like I left all of my stuff in Minneapolis. I left my cat in Minneapolis, so I was kind of eager to just like move more permanently wherever we were going to move. And we were like in limbo. So we were hopeful that we wouldn't have to like wait that long. And we had to keep extending like our lease here, because we thought it's not going to be that long. But yeah, so that's been like a huge part of our story, unfortunately. And here I was able to become a resident like in 2 months. It was super fast and easy.
How do you feel in Peru in general? Because it wasn't planned to stay for so long. Are you able to still like be fully present, or is it more like, I know eventually we're going to leave. Why should I even make this effort? Because this is how I felt when moving to Miami, for example. And it wasn't very pleasant, and I think I didn't make the most out of it. So how do you handle this situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because I think a lot of it is just mental. Like if I came into it and I knew it was like we were moving here for like 2 years, like I don't know if I would have brought my cat or not, because she doesn't travel well, but like, these things that are important to me, I would have took, and I I didn't do that because it was temporary, and we did, there's so many things here that we could have bought, small things, kitchen appliances that, like, to make it feel more like home. I like to cook and bake, so like having the right pan for something makes a difference for me. But we didn't do that because we didn't want to waste money. If we're going to move to another country, we're probably not going to take it with us. And some of that stuff I have in the US, so it's like we don't need to buy it again here. And so I think for a while, like I did kind of resist doing those things. And then, like, one by one, I've started to, because the longer it is, it just becomes too difficult to live here. And so, like, I started first by, okay, I need to make friends, Like, now I'm here long enough that I really miss, like, not having other, girlfriends to go out with. And so I started that. Over time, we've, like, bought a little bit more to, like, make it more comfortable. We got another cat here, actually, so that was like a big one. But they've happened one at a time. There was not like one moment where I kind of was like switched into that mode, and I still don't think I'm 100% in it, because we never know. Tomorrow we could hear from immigration that you've entered the next step, and then from there it's only a few more months, and so it's hard to like fully do that, and even for you, I think.
Yeah, I mean, of course, a big effort is coming from her, doing her country, but for me, it was a process as well, separating from my family, going through that, being close to them physically, but not close, and like changing my relationship with them, I guess that's what I mean. And also, not only that, that's one part only, but as Colleen mentioned, friendships, especially because I was living abroad a long time before and coming back to Peru, like it's really hard to reconnect with people because they're already having their own lives, their own circles, their own friendships, and even family, kids. So it gets harder, and you feel sometimes like I'm in my country, but I feel a foreigner in my country, and it's been a hard reality to accept. But finally, I also started working on that. Started going to activities, trying to call in friends, going out, some meditation, on walks, and things like that on my own. And I think I'm much better now.
Yeah, I think we had to both just realize that, like, we can't like put everything on hold until we move, which is kind of how we went into it. And so over time, it's like, okay, we need to just like live our lives here. We need to do as if we're living here, not temporarily,
Yeah.
Yeah, because also we're having talks about traveling before starting with family, like something I would like to do, like going to specific places we talked about and in a sequence like once a year or so, and for that we need like 2 or 3 years. Like every year we want to travel. We like traveling a lot. But so if we're always thinking like, oh, this is temporary, then well, we're gonna miss a lot. Because we're traveling in South America, which is cool.
Yeah, we've done a lot of traveling here, which is nice.
Yeah, we like that.
But any other continent where you're like, well, we'll wait until we move and then do that. And now we're like, maybe we don't wait anymore because maybe we'll never do it.
Exactly. So that attitude of like maybe when we realized this like recently, like Colleen told me like maybe we should start living our lives like today, like now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really recent realization. So we've spent like a long time kind of resisting that a little.
Yeah.
Just because we didn't know when we would hear and have. I was even hesitant at first to make too good of friends. I kind of went into it as like I just need some social outings that like don't involve Miguel, because that was like the only person I was going, you and your family,
Yeah.
But I was afraid to make a friend and then leave, and so we couldn't sustain it. But I realized like not to think like that anymore, and
Yeah, I think it's better.
yeah, they're just friends. It doesn't, not temporary.
Yeah, we have friends all around the world, and
Yeah.
doesn't depend on where we are or how long we stay or anything like that. So it's just like I think adding to that, like just being able to enjoy the present moment. And if we want to buy like things for our home, like maybe we should do it.
Yeah.
We want to have another
Especially when
cat.
they're small things.
Yeah.
It's like, why not?
Yeah, if I knew, I was telling Colleen, if I knew we were going to stay like this long or even like 2 years, maybe I would have thought about buying like a car, a small car, like so we could like drive to like different states in Peru or go to Argentina, places, we thought it was going to be shorter. But I mean, we're enjoying anyways. I mean, we're starting to realize these things. And as Colleen mentioned, she's having her activities, I'm having my activities. We're having activities in common together. So I think we've been able to balance it nicely and right.
And I think like the big advantage of having more time here, even though it wasn't planned, is like I knew his family before. I especially knew his sister, not really your parents, I guess, but I didn't know them that well. And like, family, especially in Latin America, is like such a core, is like the core thing to everything, which I knew kind of like academically, but I hadn't really experienced. And so it's like given me a new perspective on that and allowed me to like get to know them a lot better. And if we didn't like have that time here, we would see them, a few times a year and all that, but it wouldn't be the experience that like you are used to in this culture.
Mhm.
And so, even though sometimes like that's hard for me because I don't really always understand, okay, that's not how my family all lives in like different places. So we don't see each other all the time anyway, but I think it's an important like cultural understanding that's kind of like foundational to like who you are,
Yeah, that's true.
There are things that we would have missed, that I would have missed otherwise. So there's pros to it too, not just cons.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, what
Yeah.
she's saying is really true.
How do you feel when you, because you're mentioning that it was definitely a roller coaster ride of emotions the past few months, especially that you are not making the decision. You've made the decision of moving to the US, but when this is actually going to happen, it's not up to you. So there you are depending on someone else, on an organization, institution. Someone is going to make a decision anytime soon, but maybe not. It's leading to frustration from time to time as well. And obviously you have your own challenges, little hurdles, little special effects in your relationship as well as in any other relationship as well. But if you have a moment where you feel maybe overwhelmed, maybe feeling like this is too much, and you realize how the other person is feeling, how do you support each other? How do you address such a topic whenever you feel overwhelmed, for example?
I think we've had to kind of learn how to like address that together and like how to recognize like what is overwhelming to who because he doesn't understand everything I feel. I don't understand everything he feels. So just like learning that first of all and then yeah, like if he is feeling overwhelmed about the anticipation of moving, I can try to assure him that we will come back here frequently and that will be a part of our lives no matter what. And I think for me, it's nowadays more like, do you want to go back to the US? When do you want to go? I support you to go. He can't come with me, so that's the thing, but I can go. And so, we try to talk about that if I'm feeling overwhelmed by the situation and like just want a feeling of home. But I mean, yeah, in other ways, like we've just tried to like bring, I think, things that comfort each of us like into the relationship and into our home. So like for me, we got the cat, for example, which me and Miguel loves the cat as well, but he never had a cat before. So for him, it was kind of like, I guess we can have a cat. But he encouraged it for me because he knew I love cats and it might make me feel more at home to have that. And
Exactly.
and yeah, I think sometimes we spiral a little bit on the immigration stuff when we start getting like a little too excited about it might be coming soon and we look at that timeline on the portal, even though we shouldn't look at that. And it'll tell us, 1 week and we'll be like, maybe this time it's true. But then I think we try to talk each other down. Like one of us eventually will be like, we should just ignore it, and like live our lives today as we were talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, it's better because otherwise you get stressed, you get anxious, you get in a bad mood. I don't think that's good for us.
Yeah.
It's better when we enjoy the moment, enjoy our days, and just live our lives, and that will happen when it has to happen.
Yeah, and support each other. And like you mentioned, we have more of like our own activities now, and I think that helps it feel more normal and like helps like deal with stress too. So like Miguel does meditation every week with a friend, and that obviously helps with stress. Like I exercise, like regularly, which helps me, and have when he's gone now, I have my like alone time, which is also nice for me. And so we've kind of figured out these ways to support each other more in our individual differences. But yeah.
I mean, that works really well, I think. But it took time. It's not like we knew it took like months, I would say, to try, trial and error and come up with something that works better, I would say.
We're in a much different place, I think, on this than we used to be when we were more misunderstanding each other, just in the early stage of a relationship. I think that's kind of with anyone. We just had like an extra stress of this like immigration process. So
For sure. But
It
yeah,
is stressful.
yeah.
Yeah, it is really stressful. You've experienced it.
Yeah.
A couple of times, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It never ends, I guess.
And you've been talking about, I mean, yes, the paperwork, immigration aspect that will most probably be part of any intercultural relationship for a long time. And I don't really think that this is a part we have to figure out right on spot. Like, for example, Nacho and I, obviously, we are in Buenos Aires right now. The goal is to live here for a couple of years, but eventually we might also just move somewhere else in a couple of years, maybe in 5, maybe in 10, we don't know yet. Maybe somewhere in Europe. It all depends on how the situation is going to evolve here, how comfortable I'm going to feel here. It's going to depend on the political situation here. So there are so many aspects. Even though we know we want to live here for long term, we can't really influence. And I think one of the biggest benefits we have in intercultural relationships is that over time, because we are in the situations we are and we've managed quite a lot, is that we are quite flexible. So whenever there should be a situation involved, you don't feel comfortable in, and this is what I've learned as well, is I address it. So we talk about it, Nacho and I, we find a solution. And if the solution is we're gonna move to Buenos Aires, we're gonna pack our things and we're gonna move to Buenos Aires. It's not something we do from one day to the other. Obviously, it needs some planning. In that case, it took around about 1.5 years of planning, but we've managed. And what I want to say with that is, even though if in our case we have this vision of where we see each other in the future, like how we want to grow as a couple, but also eventually as a family, as this is also one of our goals for the future, to have kids and to move in a bigger place and all of this, and to grow even more. We do not figure out the details because we've learned that eventually things just might end up differently, and we might find ourselves not in Buenos Aires, but maybe in Spain in the future or so, whatever. So, and what I've learned from what you are sharing right now is that you do have obviously the goal of moving to the US as soon as possible. So as soon as the paperwork is done. And as far as I understand, you are planning to have a family as well. So this is where you see yourself in the future. What else is there you're planning for as individuals, but also as a couple? Miguel, you have your business, which you're taking with you, I guess.
I think like what you're talking about, your attitude on not planning too hard, we've kind of learned as well. And like we're really set on LA just because that was like one decision that we made. But even then it's just we're gonna go there next, not that we're gonna stay. We might, but there's just too many things we don't know. So we're trying to be flexible with that, depending on what happens like in our own families, sometimes you have to move closer to home. So that could be Lima, could be in the Midwest in the US. Or, we may just say like LA is too expensive, but we can move somewhere else in California. It could be not that far.
Yeah.
We just have no idea. We really loved Mendoza when we visited. So we were like, maybe we should just live here. Like, so I think we would like to have a family. That's one thing that's certain of what we want, but where that happens, like I don't know yet.
No, I mean we can't. It's the same approach you have, Christina. I mean we can't really tell exactly, but we just have like a 2-year roadmap for now. I would say like we know we want to go to LA next, and then travel here there for the next 1 or 2 years. But then after that, we don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe we'll move to, as Colleen said, to Chicago. Is that an option? Or Mendoza or Europe even,
Who knows?
who
Yeah.
knows? Canada, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
so So that mentality, I think it's important to keep flexibility, because otherwise it's possible always that things don't go well here, they don't go well there. If you're like closed-minded, then you're screwed.
Yeah. And I feel like early in the relationship, like very early, I had the thought of like, when we were at the moment of sort of even deciding if we should continue being together, because we were going to have to figure these things out. Like I remember thinking like, asking myself like, how comfortable would you be moving to Peru? Because like you can't date somebody from Peru if you're not willing to move there, like because I would expect him to be willing to move where my family was if they needed that, sometimes a parent gets sick or something, and it's not really like an option to not, or you feel really bad, it's not go because your partner just doesn't want to.
Yeah.
And so I think like having that kind of like clarity early on helped me, to just be like some flexibility is required for sure.
Yeah.
And if I can't do it, we shouldn't be together,
Yeah,
because
I agree.
I don't think it will work long term. So
Same, yeah, same here. I think in the beginning it was a little harder for me maybe to figure these things out, but I mean, months after, like in time, I realized this is really important. And if we needed to go back to or move to, say, Chicago or Minneapolis or anywhere around her family, I'm open to it.
yeah.
So I think the best advice, or also learning that I've had or we've had together
Mhm.
on flexibility on location.
And I think that's like another thing we think about going forward is as much as possible being able to still have like the option to work remotely. Like some companies you work in the office, but they're like sort of flexible if you go away for a few weeks, just so that it helps us like, when these times come and it's like, okay, it's time to move, then we don't have to change everything. We can at least keep jobs. It's especially helpful if we can keep US jobs just because the pay can be better, and the stability that comes with that. But that's been like a conversation, and like Miguel has looked at some jobs in the US just to sort of see, and he looks out, what's the parental leave policy, and like is it remote or hybrid or something like that. Like
Exactly.
not that you have to take a job like that, but it's like high on the list of priorities when deciding. And I work independent remote now and would like to continue, but if I end up getting a full-time salaried job somewhere, like I will consider the same factors.
Yeah, that's something we're still thinking about. We're both like independent at the moment, but we can consider a full-time job if it's worth it.
Yeah.
I can at least.
I think both can, and we don't want jobs probably where like you have 10 days of vacation and you have to work in the office every day. Because even to visit your family, that's like not enough time.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, we want to, spend some time with our family and take care of things we need to take care of when having a family. So like, I want to make sure if I take a job, it's a job that has like very nice policies around that, and
Yeah.
or at least like,
Or will allow
okay.
you to work from another location for a month if you.
Yeah. For now, I mean, the job I have is great at that. So I have all the flexibility, not all the flexibility, but very good flexibility. And I like what I do. So that's why it's like hard to leave it.
Yeah, you don't have to leave it.
I don't have to leave it, no.
Yeah. You were talking about your advice already, Miguel, which is staying flexible, because I would slowly like to come to an end. And what I usually do is, in the end, is asking what the biggest advice is my guests would like to share for everyone who's listening and or watching, even though I feel like we could do a deep dive on so many more topics, such as the wedding. I'm also still very interested on listening to how that went, for example, especially with two different cultures. But I also feel like for everyone who wants to get in touch with you and who would like to learn more about you, you would be open-minded to answer all questions and share experience in general. But again, to slowly come to an end, what advice is there you would like to share with everyone who is listening and or watching right now?
Well, there's a lot there, but I would say for me it was keeping my mind open, because it's hard. It's hard to see through what you've learned, hard to see through what you are, your core values and all of that you think you are, because sometimes you are not that. It's just that you grew up learning or believing some things that are just like part of a culture. But being open to understand that the world is full of every other different culture and from extreme to extreme. You know, I'm only just one little piece there. So being able to get out of my mind and accept all sorts of ideas and listening, I think that's helped me a lot to on this relationship together and this life together, I would say. So that would be my main piece of advice to our minds open or my mind open and consider that every reality is valid, even if that doesn't make sense to you.
Yeah. I was gonna say the same thing actually about being open because I think like it's important to both like be very clear on values and things that like you don't want to change. And that comes first, but then all the other stuff that's like less rigid to be like more open on and like willing to like learn that there are other ways. And sometimes I think like US culture is not so good at that. And so it's like, you know, me and my friends, we've all thought the same way about certain things forever. And, it was kind of hard for me to like break out of that. And I had to really ask myself, like, do I believe this or is this just kind of like what I'm around? And like, is it like a deal breaker for me? And some things like are deal breakers, that's okay. But some things really aren't. And I think if you're open to kind of asking yourself, like, honestly about that, then you can make it work and not just make it work, but like make it flourish more because you can more fully like accept your partner that way and not coming down hard with criticisms as much and being a little like too like strong-willed about things, just keep that for the stuff that's most important and then the rest, if you're both open, it can be really beautiful like what comes out.
Yeah, I agree. And like in little examples, little things every day that shows it's not like just the big things. I would say small things, like even stupid things like, oh, I'm doing the dishes, but I'm doing it this way. And I learned to do it that way. So I'm gonna say, why don't you do it that way? You know?
Stuff around food, I feel like is like the most obvious like daily examples of like, in the beginning we argued so much about like not like bad arguments, but bickering about do we eat a bigger lunch or a bigger dinner? Because for me, dinner is the main meal. For him, lunch is the main meal. But we were working remote together all day, every day. So, we had to like make decisions on these things and like, and that little stuff like that is what requires like openness, not being like, well, I have to do it this way because that's who I am. Do I really have to eat this way? Because that's who I am, or am I just being like stubborn, And same with you. So
Exactly.
we don't fight about that anymore. But yeah.
I think
Sounds familiar. We still have a few fighting points, actually. I mean, not fighting points. Things that are like, because for example, the other day we had like a little cheese platter and I was looking forward to have some baguette with it because I don't like the bread you get here. It's like a little bit smushy. And I just like my German bread because I'm German, because I'm German, I need German bread. So that's exactly what you've just mentioned, Colleen. My belief, this is how I grew up, that we just have the best bread in the world. So, and I told Nacho I'd love to have baguette with it. And he was like, where should I get baguette right now? It's like, I don't know, but I don't want this bread. I'm not gonna eat it. And we had a discussion about it. And then he was like, this goddamn baguette. And he started insulting the bread. And I was like, you know what? This is important to me. And I would love to have this baguette. And we're going to make this work. So let's find a way. I was very stubborn in that very moment. And we laughed about it afterwards. But those are just like things, as mentioned, that are important to me. And I am in a new country. And obviously I have to adapt. But if there's a way for me to get baguette and I'm looking forward to it, I want baguette. And it's funny, you can make fun about it and you don't have to take me serious in that very moment. And I can laugh about it as well. And I wasn't too serious in that very moment either, but that just shows how different we are and also how we grew up.
But that's also why maybe we attract each other because we're different.
Yeah, there's something interesting about it.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, the food stuff is so common, so common.
Yeah, it
Always
happens
something.
all the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, same thing, same advice. I mean, I put it in practice myself. So if we have to eat less at lunch, that's fine.
Yeah, because sometimes the baguette is important. And that's the thing about knowing what actually matters, you know. Maybe the cheese is not important, but the baguette is. So you decide, you stick on the one that you care, but the rest, if it's not that big of a deal, it's like, okay, you know,
Right.
I don't have to always
And
give it away.
that reality is valid. I would say that's what I
Yeah.
was saying before. Like your experience of it, maybe it doesn't make sense in the moment for the other person, but it's valid.
Exactly.
And we have
Yeah.
that too. He buys the groceries, but I do most of the cooking. And sometimes it's like, no, I really do need this one ingredient, but it's like very hard to find here. So,
Oh yeah.
and it's like, unless it's impossible, like, you know, he has to go find it.
Yeah, I have to go somewhere else and make the trip to find it.
Yeah.
And it's imported sometimes, it's not easy to find, but it's because,
Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not, but yeah, sometimes
Yeah,
I really
but if
want
it makes you feel home, especially
Makes you feel
then if
home.
it's like a recipe you're really looking forward to because it's like makes you feel home. And then it
yeah.
has to be that ingredient. And if you know it's available, like the same with the baguette, I knew we could get it and I wanted it. I got this baguette and I was so happy about it.
It was totally worth it.
We're gonna get up again tonight, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
No, but yes, again, thank you so much for taking your time and having a little chat talking about your love story. I really enjoyed talking to you, especially I feel like we have so much in common. That might be a cultural aspect as well, the Peruvian, Argentinian aspect. But I do think that, as mentioned before, as being in an intercultural relationship, this is already connecting us a lot because we know exactly how it feels like, especially I know exactly how you feel right now. This transition moment, month, years you're in right now, how stressful they can be. But I'm so happy that you found a way to make the best out of it and to enjoy the moment, to be fully present, even though you know that you're going to leave eventually. Again, to come to an end. For everyone who wants to learn more about you and about your background in general, about how you met and everything we've just talked about, what's the best way to contact you?
Oh, I haven't thought about it, but maybe Instagram.
Instagram is fine, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could share. We don't have we do kind of have a page together, but we've not, we didn't never updated it or made it public. So our individual ones is fine.
Individual Instagrams, yeah.
Yeah. We can
So I'm
share
gonna
that.
link them. Perfect. I'm gonna link them in the side note as well as in the YouTube description.
Okay.
Again, thank you so much for your time. I hope we're gonna stay in contact. And as soon as you got the news that the case was improved, just text me, and I'm really looking forward to hear back from you and to see where your journey is going to lead you. And maybe in 2 years or so, we're gonna have another conversation, and the world might look completely different. And it involved exactly how you envision it right now.
Yeah. And thank you for having us too. It's fun to kind of like share our story and especially with someone who understands, because that can be hard to find.
I agree. I really enjoy this conversation. And also, what you do is really helpful. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, with help.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching and or for listening to today's podcast episode. As always, you will find all the links in the YouTube description as well as in the side notes of the podcast. Also, if you would like to tell your story, I linked a form. So just describe how you guys met, what it is you would like to talk about, and maybe we're going to sit down and you're going to tell your story, whatever topic there is you would like to talk about. Another news I would like to share with you, I am going to start my first program. This program is for women who are about to move or who moved abroad for love and who are struggling to adapt. It's called Love and Connection Across Cultures. I also link it in the side note of the podcast as well as in the YouTube description. If you moved and you still struggle to adapt, or if you're about to move abroad and you would like to prepare yourself for the big move, you do have any other questions, please feel free to contact me. I'm here. And yeah, with this being said, have a lovely morning, have a lovely afternoon, have a lovely evening, wherever you are right now. And please take care. Bye.